what would it mean? What would it mean to have a difficult conversation managing up? Uh, because there's a difference between climbership and leadership. Climbership, climbership is looking up. Whether I'm a good follower or not, that's where my energy would be if I'm a climber. But there's a difference between climbership and leadership. It's important to know the difference. And then there's this acronym, VUCA. Some of you have heard this acronym, VUCA, 20 times in the last month. And to some of you, it is brand new. I didn't make it up. Over the past week, I got credited. Robert, your VUCA thing. This is a military acronym from 20, maybe even 30 years ago. The acronym VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I believe that a lot of loud microphones are telling us that, well, it's just a VUCA world, as if we have to surrender to VUCA, as if, well, it's just a license for craziness and a license for low expectations. And I violently disagree. We absolutely do not have to settle or surrender to VUCA. If we want a competitive advantage in the marketplace and we want to be impactful, we absolutely need to strive to solve VUCA. So when I think about the why of this presentation, it's because there's a lot of managing down. We need to manage up. There's a lot of climbership, and we need more leadership. And hashtag we need to solve VUCA and have a license for high expectations. The agenda for tonight is I'm going to flip back and forth between what's conventional and what's alternate. So there is conversations, there's chatter in the BA world, specifically in the BA and beyond. There's a European conference that's going on later this month, well, in middle of May, 4 cities. And there is a rumbling of, oh my God, a lot of us are saying the same things. We need to move the frontier. And so my material tonight, my material in general, doesn't aim to be provocative per se, but my material does aim to minimize redundancy with other stuff you're hearing. So again, I'm not trying to be provocative for the sake of itself. I'm just trying to minimize redundancy. And so tonight I'm gonna run through 10 topics to manage up without kissing up, but I'm gonna contrast what I believe is already common sense, and I'm going to propose to you what's uncommon sense. I'm going to contrast between what is the conventional thinking behind leadership paradigms, flywheel, mistakes, etc., and then I'm going to offer something alternate. I do welcome interruptions. An active chat window is nothing short of entertaining for all of you. I do have a lot of material to cover, so I'm going to try to push the pace. But again, feel free to take yourself, with as many of us as are on the Zoom call. I think we can still. I defer to the board on this, on the typical chapter etiquette, but feel free to go crazy in the chat and feel free to take yourself off mute with any sort of reaction that you might like to offer. So these on the right, you see the 10 topics, the 10 tools to manage up without kissing up. The learning objectives, I hope that some fraction of these will inspire you to shape your culture. Too many of us are in a culture of low discipline and low empathy, and I hope these materials will inspire you to raise your team's discipline, raise your team's empathy. And it's not just inspiration, there'll be some tactics. And we are human, and it shouldn't have to be all seriousness. So let's find the fun, the humanity, the ridiculousness, the imperfection of us as individuals and as teams. The deep dive of this material is in 2 of my 3 books. These 2 books are available. Amazon has free previews. Tool number 1 is our leadership paradigm. So for the past couple decades, the primary leadership paradigm that we've been operating under is values and principles. We see it in the Agile Manifesto. We see it on the wall. We see values and principles everywhere. And, half playfully, It's about trying. You just got to try real hard. But values and principles, they're squishy. In our heart of hearts, we know that there are colleagues of different seniority levels that are not behaving, they're absolutely not behaving according to the values and principles. And that's why you see executives say, well, values and principles, they're not just words on the wall. Why did you feel the need to tell us that? Because some of our colleagues are giving lip service to values and principles while they opt out. And the thing about values and principles is it's hard to detect who opted out. And it's hard to make you own the fact that you opted out because they're squishy. So my first provocative proposal to you tonight, the first tool, is that values and principles, for all their value over the last couple decades, they're not solving our biggest problems, and they should not be sacred. And I'm proposing a different leadership paradigm. It's at a different altitude, and the different leadership paradigm is metaphors. Metaphors. The good news is we already use metaphors as a leadership paradigm. It doesn't beat us over the head. And so let's get clear. Let's distinguish what are good metaphors for bad teamwork versus good metaphors for good teamwork. And so as I show you these on my slides, I welcome you to let your mind wander on its own, through your fingers on the keyboard, take yourself off mute. When you think of metaphors for teamwork, good teamwork and bad teamwork, what come to mind? The metaphors that come to mind for me is that when our team is not in a good place, I feel we're in a kind of traffic jam. We're fighting. And it's a communication traffic jam. It's back to back to back to back to back to back meetings. It's email overload. And I believe that many of us are caught in communication traffic jams. Although we're waving the flag of speed, last time I checked, anyone involved in any kind of traffic jam, yeah, you're not moving fast. So don't kid yourself. Frantic is not fast. If you're double booked with your meetings, triple booked, you are essentially in a game of bumper cars. If you have, whether it's yourself, your colleagues who are constantly changing their meeting schedule. Oh, I got a conflict, and wham, that meeting is now 2 weeks later. You are in a metaphor of bumper cars. And there's a term, change fatigue, there's burnout, and the agile world made an unfortunate word choice that every 2 weeks we got a sprint. And a lot of us feel like we're in a never-ending sprint. Well, is innovation teamwork? Is it a marathon? Is it a sprint? Do you want it both ways? But for purpose of this slide, I'm presenting metaphors for not so great teamwork. And again, the contrast here is that it's a different altitude than the leadership paradigm of values and principles. So again, I'm going to nudge you. I'm going to welcome your ideas. What metaphors come to mind for you for good and bad teamwork? I'm going to continue on to let you off the hook. The metaphors that I think of when I think of great teamwork is I think of a symphony, a choir, brass, and woodwinds, and percussion, and synchronization, and listening, and balance, and rehearsal, and so many amazing culture traits when we imitate a symphony. What would a symphony do? I think that's a great question for us to ask as a team and to manage up when our leaders or climbers don't have synchronization skills. The second metaphor for good teamwork is a flywheel in a groove, a factory, muscle memory, efficiency, predictability, scalability. I think these are all great culture traits for a team that knows what it is doing. And the third metaphor is an asset portfolio. What do we leave behind that's valuable to the next team? Do we leave behind just code? Do we leave behind user stories? What is durable and what's disposable? So for purpose of tonight, I'm going to leave you with these three metaphors for good teamwork. If we had more time, I'd love to explore more of the performing arts. I teach Latin dance, salsa, bachata, cha-cha, and I believe there's a wealth of great culture traits in partner dance. Theater, there's story, integration of many moving parts. Theater companies don't reinvent the wheel. That's why their success rate is so high. What would a theater company do? So the performing arts are great metaphors for great teamwork. And again, metaphors, whether they're metaphors for good or bad teamwork, they're a great leadership paradigm. So the first tool for tonight to manage up without kissing up is to reconsider your leadership paradigm. Instead of the squishiness of values and principles, consider the leadership paradigm of metaphors. The chat looks very quiet. So I'm going to make you feel a little bit awkward while I mosey on. The second tool is a flywheel, and because Zoom is hiding my stuff, I need to, there we go. The second tool tonight is a flywheel or a factory. Most teams at the moment resemble a meeting factory. They resemble an email factory. 5 or 10 meetings a day, 15 meetings a day, 100 emails a day, 150 emails a day. Maybe you're a ticket factory. And I believe every team needs to ask itself, is this what constitutes success? That we're just processing meetings, emails, and Jira tickets? Is this activity or is this productivity? And so the alternate flywheel and factory that I'm going to propose to you that I believe is productivity. I believe that a healthy team is a kind of agreement factory. We agree on the roadmap. We agree on the process flow. We agree on a project charter. We agree on the GUI design, the logical database model, the code, the migration script, the data conversion script, the training approach, the training materials. Oh my God, there are how many? Dozens? Dozens of agreements that a healthy team needs to land on to generate momentum, have the sense of accomplishment, to resemble a flywheel and resemble a factory. Oh, but Robert, that word sign off makes me so nervous. Okay, we can hedge because the ink is always wet. Just because something is on paper and rigorous does not mean it is rigid. Just because it is explicit does not mean it's rigid. So we can hedge and say, well, if the word sign off makes you nervous, let's call it an expectation. And so the metaphor that I'd like you to consider to manage up is the concept, the metaphor of an expectation factory. Set expectations, meet expectations, rinse, repeat. What are the the financial lens of an agreement factory? So I stole this concept and this graph from the supply chain world. The concept, if you are interested in researching this, the topic in ops and supply chain is called EOQ, economic order quantity, because there is such a thing in bundles, and our teams are information bundles, right? We have this conveyor belt of information bundles in our team. And if you're working too far to the right, your large bundle size, this is low frequency, and this resembles the waterfall world. And, to a significant degree, a lot of teams are avoiding bundle sizes that are too big because of obsolescence and that kind of blue-green curve, the holding cost curve. It's just high when your bundles are too big and your go-live events have too low of a frequency. But for those of you of a certain age, you might remember the question, is there such a thing as too agile? And what would that be to be too agile? Well, when we're moving bundle sizes, I believe and the supply chain world would support me on this, there is such a thing as too small of a bundle size because frequency is not free. Whether I visit my public library, my local pub, the grocery store, my relatives, my family. Frequency is not free. Um, and so the happy medium here, not surprisingly, is where the two cost curves intersect. And this is where the sum of the two costs is at its minimum. And so for purpose of tonight, I really only just want to give you the image. I wanted to give you the image of this cost curve. And if you see value in this, research the topic EOQ, economic order quantity. And so when we think of agility, many of us think of just frequency. We just operate on the left. What I'm asking you to consider is to consider, instead of technological agility as defined by the Agile Manifesto, consider a type of financial agility, which is low cost. And specific is low marginal cost. And the good news is that the optimal cost, it's not overly sensitive, because at the intersection of these two rows and the dip, the trough of the sum, the curve is quite flat. So we don't have to be super, super precise about our bundle size of projects or deliverables, because anywhere approximately at the right place is still close enough to the optimal cost. We don't need to sweat precision when it comes to the optimal bundle size. But again, this is going back to the concept of a factory, the metaphor of a factory, as the second tool for tonight, in contrast to the conventional thinking about we just want speed and frequency at the expense of everything else. Speed is not free. Frequency is not free. Okay. I'm going to quickly jump out, see if this, okay, the chat still looks pretty quiet. I do know some names I might start calling out some names of the people I know in the room if I don't get any reactions. If there are no reactions, I get a little bit nervous. But I'm going to move on to tool number 3. Errors. So there's a lot of conversation about failure and mistakes and celebrating mistakes. And I thought back to a statistics class I took that distinguished among a sampling error, a systemic error, and a systematic error. And so here you see coffee. Let's take the example of a cup of coffee. If you and I are having coffee and I spill coffee once a month, once a year, it's a sampling error. And it's probably no big deal. If I spill coffee 70% of the time that you and I meet for coffee, but it's still accidental, that's called systemic errors. I'm just a klutz, and I need to be more careful because, systemic errors get expensive, much more expensive than sampling. But those two kinds of errors are still not purposeful. But the third kind of error, systematic, is purposeful and frequent spilling of the coffee, as if every time we get together for coffee, I purposely spill my coffee on the table, on your clothes, that sort of thing. And that's of course a big problem. And so I'm sharing this tool to manage up, because I don't know that every team distinguishes the differences among these errors. And no one's asking for perfection. So let's not demonize. No one's expecting to be perfect, I don't believe, but I do expect perfect intentions. So human error is the sampling error. Institutional error are systemic and systematic errors. And I believe absolutely we can challenge our leaders, challenge our climbers, challenge our executives, that if and when we see systemic errors, those are expensive, and systematic errors, those are also expensive, then we have every right and every reason to turn the screws and not be forgiving. Right? Human error, we can be forgiving. Institutional error, these are expensive. We should not be forgiving of these expensive errors. So about 10 years ago, I learned the acronym GETMO, which stands for Good Enough to Move On. And this is a great acronym to help us avoid perfection. I credit a gentleman by the name of Craig Groeschel, Groe. He's in Oklahoma in the United States. And he taught me the term GETMO, good enough to move on. Because somewhere along the path to perfection, you and your team's time is more valuable working on something else. And over the past 5 years, I learned the term ELMO, which is quite close to GETMO. And ELMO stands for enough. Let's move on. So I hope that these playful acronyms and the distinction among these kinds of errors help you to accept certain kinds of failure, certain kinds of mistakes. The forgivable stuff is sampling error. The stuff that gets really expensive that we should be less forgiving about, those are systemic, that's neglect, and systematic, that's purposeful stuff. And so I am noticing some stuff in the chat. So I'm going to take advantage of that. I've been talking for a while. I'm going to look at the chat. I'm going to invite folks to take themselves off mute if they have the appetite to react to something that I've said so far. I have heard this term GETMO. Yes. Elmo is a good, yes. Shout Elmo when the meeting gets bogged down. Amen. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Thank you for the chat. And again, we got one more. I'm going to take another peek at the chat. Okay, excellent. Metaphor pictures. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so first tool was leadership paradigms. We're moving from values and principles to metaphors. The second, I got to advance back here. The second is that instead of a flywheel that's focused on frequency, let's be a factory that's focused on financial agility, and that is low marginal cost. And then the third tool tonight is distinguishing among sampling, systemic, and systematic errors. And this is straight out of a statistics class. If any of you want to research this concept more. Tool number 4 is speed. So I've already mentioned traffic jams. And what I believe too many teams are addicted to, their comfort zone is speed at the expense of a lot. We're treating speed as a leading culture trait, and we end up in communication traffic jams. So whether it's, let's test the reaction functionality. I don't see reaction on my, but whether it's a reaction or in the chat, how many of you, on a scale from 1 to 10, do you feel you're in a communication traffic jam? Optional audience participation. On a scale from 1 to 10, how intense are your communication traffic jams because of your environment's addiction to speed? And all I'm asking you to do is that treat speed instead as a lagging culture trait. So look at the traffic on the left, compare it to the traffic on the right. The traffic on the right treats speed as a lagging culture trait, and it is not thoughtless, brainless, reckless speed. It is incredibly thoughtful. Think of the discipline and the empathy, the discipline in architecting these highways. Think of the empathy. You know, these cars are going, I don't know, they look like they're going really fast. How much does each car care about the behavior of the next car? It really cares. That qualifies as high empathy. And so the tool here to manage up is it's synchronization. Instead of treating as your leading culture trait speed, to be blunt, that's what the agile world is promoting. It's waving the flag of speed. And I'm encouraging you instead to put speed in the back seat as a lagging culture trait. It's important, of course, but it has a prerequisite. With so many moving parts in your team, you must have synchronization skills. So I'm going to steal a quote from the last century. Lee Iacocca is an American automobile executive from the last century. And one of the quotes he's known for is the speed of the boss is the speed of the team. And I might have this on a later slide, but I'm going to say it now. So I disagree with Mr. Iacocca. Here in this decade, it's the synchronization skill, right? Again, look at this traffic on the right. It's the synchronization skill of the boss. That is what dictates the speed of so many moving parts. And if your team shrugs at synchronization, you resemble the traffic on the left. And you must understand what are the tactics and the mechanisms and the frameworks to imitate the traffic on the right. Instead of being obsessed with speed, to achieve speed, you must be obsessed with synchronization. You must be willing to imitate a symphony. But let's talk about the cost ramification. Okay, because folks responded in the chat, I'm going to take a quick. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of high marks. Oh my goodness. Everyone who responded on a scale from 1 to 10, the lowest number is a 9. You can see that in the chat. Not surprised at all. So a lot of us are caught in communication traffic jams. We are in meeting gridlock. Why is that understandable? It's because of the short blue bar. Let's talk. So tool number 5 tonight is the cost profile. And again, I need to hide my little Zoom controls again. If you are a team that is addicted to meetings, it is completely understandable because of the short blue bar. It's just cheap and easy. But if you are a team that starts grumbling about the number of meetings that you have, that is also perfectly understandable because of the tall orange bar. It is high marginal cost. We could take some fun examples. If all of us were at a conference, but there were only 3 of us, name tags would be overkill at a tiny conference. If we were at a restaurant that was tiny and it only served, I don't know, lasagna and spaghetti and nothing else, a written menu would be overkill because it's just low communication traffic in such a tiny conference, a tiny restaurant. So, of course, as tool number 5 tonight, I'm going to propose a different cost profile. If your communication traffic density can justify it. If we're a conference of, I don't know, 20 people, 40 people, the high cost of name tags is not overkill, right? At some point, we reach the tipping point to say, you know what, name tags, why are name tags worthwhile? That tall blue bar, it's because we now benefit from the low marginal costs of communicating our names. And if we're at a restaurant with 10 dishes, 15 dishes, why would we go to the trouble of a written menu, which is that tall blue bar? Well, because now sharing expectations, are going back to the metaphor of an expectation factory, a restaurant that has numerous offerings on its menu, the scale of communication can justify, gasp, the high cost of a written menu. So I think that this cost profile slide helps explain why do we have this love-hate relationship with meetings and why do we have this love-hate relationship with documentation. It's because they have different costs and the scale matters. And so tool number 5 tonight is that I believe that many executives, they only know the cost profile on the left. Because if your executives knew how to reduce marginal costs for BAs and your innovation team, they would do it. They would do it. And to be blunt, they don't. So I'm hoping that through these tools, through my books, etc., you will reduce your company's marginal cost on your terms before your executives reduce your company's upfront cost on their terms. This cost profile on the right, it's all of business. Low marginal cost is what you need for profitability. If you're not obsessed with the cost profile on the right, how do you expect to be profitable? So I talked about documentation and meetings. And so I consider meetings and emails are our activity. And documentation, governed in a certain way that I'll explain shortly, is our productivity. It's our keystrokes, because that's what's durable. And so again, I'm going to ask you to reconsider your definition of agility, because for the past 20 years, you've been taught that agility is strictly technological. It is about frequency and it is about speed. And do you see that short orange bar? That's what I would call financial agility. And I'm asking you to consider speed and frequency as secondary culture traits. They matter. But when you're caught in communication traffic jams, you're moving slowly. So I'm going to cry BS that you're moving fast. So again, that's provocative. I'm going to take a peek. I only see one comment in the chat. You want to take a break? And yes. Okay. So I have about 20 minutes left. Tool number 6 is verb sprawl. I believe a lot of projects have about, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 dozen verbs in their project plan. They're a team that's all over the place. Your project plan risks, with so many verbs, your project plan risks being a public dumping ground of spontaneously conceived work. It's reinventing the wheel. It is lumpy. This verb variability disguises and hides all sorts of complexity. And to refer to the metaphor of dance, it's as if you're a dancer who you're just always creating new footwork. Who wants to be a dancer constantly looking at your feet, sweating word choice? And there's that acronym: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. If your project plan or your bullet point task list, your public dumping ground, if you're all over the place and you're lumpy and you've got verb sprawl, you are highly tolerant of a VUCA environment, and you absolutely do not resemble an expectation factory. So tool number 6 to manage up is to reduce the variability of the verbs that you manage with. And instead of managing with those 4 adjectives, the 4 adjectives are responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And I'm going to assume that you're familiar enough with these. And tonight's session proposes to you that instead of managing with a million different verbs in these 4 adjectives, imagine what you can govern with 5 verbs. Because anything you would govern with a racy involves 4 or more people. It involves a good number of people, which means it's worth putting on paper, which means it's worth governing, knowing that you have to put this stuff on paper. There's a form of speech in the English language that conveys action. That form of speech, it's not an adjective. It's a verb. And so in San Diego in November, over lunch, right after my presentation, someone says, "Oh yeah, the 5 verbs, draft, review." Yeah, Dr. Rad. And I was blissfully surprised because I've been using these 5 verbs for almost 2 decades in my work, and I never landed on an acronym. So I'm relieved and I'm delighted to not just call this framework the 5 verbs, that I can now playfully call it Dr. Rad. So this is your first glimpse of what 5 verbs looks like in a project plan. And yes, if you have reactions, good, bad, or ugly, to 5 verbs, again, take yourself off mute or put something in the chat. Good, bad, or ugly. It's all good. Everything that you wanted to accomplish in the RACI, you can accomplish with 5 verbs, but wait, there's more. You also govern a very clear, unambiguous sense of sequence. Sequence with RACI, no idea. Duration, no idea. Percent complete, don't know. So 5 verbs gives you everything you had with RACI, but you also have those 3 aspects of governing. 5 verbs helps you govern an agreement factory. That's the metaphor we're aiming for. Is this smooth, muscle memory, drumbeat, rhythmic? I'm just here to keep setting expectations. And the 5 verbs, ironically, prevents over-documentation, because the moment your team says, "Oh, you know what? I can't assign that. I don't have, hey boss, I don't have anyone to draft. I don't have anyone to draft that or approve that." Essentially, what the team is saying is that that work is not worth documenting. So you can do that work at the pub. And another positive aspect of governing with five verbs is we govern what is finite and we govern what qualifies as productivity. Because meetings and emails, they're infinite and they're our activity. So five verbs helps you to walk away from trying to govern infinite activity. It encourages you to only formally manage what is the finite productivity. And your team should know and must know what is finite that constitutes success for this project. So again, quick time check, 13 minutes to our break, or 13 minutes really till I wrap up. So tool number 7 is an asset portfolio and what inheritance, what legacy will you want to leave behind? So this image is the portfolio of a year's work of meeting minutes. This is where in the front seat, a team talks. Talk. In the back seat, meeting minutes. Johnny, scribe. AI, take notes. This is the team that shrugs at documentation. Says, you know what, our work, I don't know that it's worth documenting. So this team is committed to meeting minutes, which are pretty disposable. You're never going to change meeting minutes. Like, talk about rigid meeting minutes. You're not going to go back and say, well, we should probably revise. And so with verb sprawl and meeting minutes collaboration, meeting minutes just try to capture what did people say? Where did we land? But collaboration or alignment, we think of divergent thinking, convergent thinking. Meeting minutes don't demand collaboration. They also leave authority and accountability uncoupled. Many of us have been in a position where we feel accountable for ABC, but we don't feel we have the authority for ABC. That's kind of a bum deal because it means someone else evidently has the authority without the accountability. And so if you're just documenting meeting minutes, you have a high tolerance to give some people authority without accountability, and you have some people with accountability without authority. And I'm just going to call that a toxic environment. Very imbalanced environment. And we're basically saying, documentation, overrated, not glamorous. We have no reason to take pride. No one's going to carefully curate. And it's low trust. And I'm going to define trust as 4 traits. The minute you mention the word trust, double click and immediately think of 4 flavors of trust: competence, honesty, dependability, and benevolence. Again, competence, honesty, dependability, and benevolence. And a lot of environments that are just shrugging at documentation, meeting minutes, these are low trust environments. So I'm going to propose to you, of course, the opposites. An asset portfolio. And what you see here are approximately 60 assets that are worth governing with 5 verbs. Most of these are worth governing with 5 verbs. Imagine being a new team member and being told, hey, part of your onboarding is that you review, you get familiar with these assets. We've got in the upper left, market-facing stuff. What are we doing with our customers, suppliers, competitors? On the upper right, current state. The middle right, what's change management? What's the ADKAR stuff? If you're not familiar with the ADKAR framework, I invite you to look up ProSize framework about change management, ADKAR or ADKAR. This asset portfolio, governed with 5 verbs, this stuff is durable. This is going to be valuable 6 months from now, 12 months from now. Governing this with 5 verbs, it's forced collaboration. And now you couple authority and accountability. If you want a seat at the table, Mrs. Executive, I want to know your verb. You have authority and you also have accountability. If you want decision rights, you also have decision responsibilities. And now we can raise the glamour, the sexiness, the pride in what we put on paper. Imagine a team that says, you know what? We have the courage and the humility to put our dysfunctional current state on paper. Think about a team that has pride in the project charter, what it's going to bring to your users and your customers. Imagine a future state process flow that's going to blow the mind of your constituents, your stakeholders. So again, this tool, an asset portfolio, in contrast to a portfolio of meeting minutes, it establishes high trust. Again, the four aspects, the four dimensions of trust. As you look at these three palettes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, so there's 11 sections here. This is glamorous. This is high trust. This says we are competent. We know exactly what to put on paper, and we know what is just a chat. And we are honest about where something stinks. We are dependable in our project management stuff. We're dependable with our status reports and our project plan, et cetera. And we're showing benevolence because all this information, now that information isn't locked in our heads, all these decisions that we've made are on paper. We've reduced the marginal cost to educate the next team, to collaborate again, to share information, and to change our mind. When you reduce the marginal cost to change your mind, that's what the agile world aimed to do. But the agile world is still shrugging at documentation, and the agile world is still addicted to speed and frequency. The agile world is not addicted to low marginal cost. All right. So the previous 7 tools, quick time check. All right. 7 minutes. I'm going to try to wrap up the last 3 tools in 7 minutes. So for those of you who read music, again, I haven't checked the chat in a while. I'm going to check the chat. Ooh, we've got some messages. Start, assess. I came across with same. Okay, so someone's comment here. When I checked Get Mo and Elmo, I came across with same. Start, assess, monitor. Okay, cool. I don't know how to respond to that, but thank you. Why would a task be a plan and delegate? A task. Okay, I don't understand that comment either. So,
It's about verb sprawl, right?
I'm sorry.
It's about it was in your verb sprawl word cloud. You had delegate or delegating. I thought, oh, why is delegating in a project plan? Surely planning is about assigning tasks, which is delegating anyway.
So are you expecting to reserve time in the project plan for the verb delegate?
No, I would be gobsmacked to see a word delegate in any project plan.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Again, I got to read a private message here. It means give viewers 10 minutes break. Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so we're going to take a break at 5 o'clock. So not at 5 o'clock. In 5 minutes, we're going to take a break. About a 10-minute break. All right. So there's another comment here. I've used AI to summarize meeting recording. Yeah, absolutely. If that's what constitutes success, I just I don't know what metaphor that is. I think that is a recording factory. So if you're a team that says, you know what constitutes success is that we recorded the meeting. I just think that that's very time consuming. That's very time consuming for your next team. And so meeting recordings, we could go back and we could say, you know what, we could put the recordings in the project plan to say that's what constitutes success. And this is aimed to propose a portfolio of meeting minutes. And so this also could be recordings. So if that is I'm not encouraging this. I don't like this idea, but I think that is a decision that a team could make, that what constitutes success is that we have recordings of our meetings. Let's talk about that after the break. Because the verb then is record. So the 7 tools we've covered, my hope is that this image, for those of you who read music, you can see the rhythm. You can see the muscle memory, um, and you see categories. You see process, documentation, people, and at the end you see the tech stuff. And so in this image, you'll see 7 of the tools that we've covered so far before I move on to tools 8, 9, and 10. So there's a metaphor of an expectation factory, right? The ink is always wet. There's a flywheel, there's a rhythm, there's a muscle memory, and there are no systemic or systematic errors because we know what we need to do. We know what we need to put on paper, but sampling errors are still okay. There's no single point of failure. And what we're doing with this sort of project plan is we are treating synchronization as a leading culture trait. And when we are synchronized, we achieve speed. This is low marginal cost. It's not free. It's significant upfront cost, just like a written menu at a restaurant, right? That written menu has significant upfront cost. And as you look at these things, row 3 is a project charter, and there's a customer lifecycle model, row 13, future state scripts, et cetera. This is absolutely a significant upfront cost if you like the idea of the cost profile of low marginal cost. You see the 5 verbs, and what this produces is a legacy of the asset portfolio. We know exactly what is worth writing down. Everything else is just talk. All right, one more topic maybe, and then we'll take a break. I mentioned this earlier in the Start with Why section, is that an 8th tool to manage up without kissing up is to distinguish climbers from leadership. Employees who are climbing are looking up the ladder. I don't know whether they're good followers or not, but I know their energy is on following. And as they climb, they are prone to diminishing others. And they're prone to be hyper competitive, demonize others, and lean into personality conflict. And when we're tolerating a culture of climbership, we build a boxing ring of people. That's a choice of a culture. And I believe that this is a culture that breeds low trust. And again, so here you see on paper the 4 components of trust: competence, honesty, dependability, and benevolence. So tool 8 tonight is I'm inviting you to consider the opposites of all of these. Good leaders listen. Good leaders, they don't diminish, they lift, they make others better. They know the difference between disagreeing and demonizing, because disagreeing is absolutely okay. Demonizing is absolutely not okay. Task conflict is good. Personality conflict is not good. A boxing ring of ideas is great. Divergent thinking, diversity of thinking. A boxing ring of people is not great. And so when we really are able to distinguish climbership from leadership, or leadership from climbership, we can build a culture of high trust. And with that, I am going to, the topic when we come back from break is the martial art of Aikido. And we're going to talk about exaggerating into absurdity. So do we have a 10-minute break, Sid?
Yeah, yeah, thank you, Robert. So now we will take 10-minute break and we'll resume at 7:10. Thank you.
See you at 7:10, everybody.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good break. So let's start the session again. So whenever you're ready, Robert, you can continue your session. Yeah.
And I bet I was on mute. All right. So thank you again and welcome back. Sid, you can see my screen?
Yeah. Yeah, I can
All
see
right.
it.
All right. So we are on the last two tools. And as you can see from my deck, I've got like 8 more slides. And we can go into formal Q&A, informal Q&A. And if you'd like to take a peek into what I presented last week to the St. Louis chapter, this is much more detailed, then I'm happy to give you a tour of any fraction of that material. I don't have a hard stop at 7:30 Pacific or 8. But let's go ahead and wrap up this deck with the last 2 of 10 tools. So to get our wheels turning again, tool number 8 is distinguishing. Again, this is 10 tools to manage up, because someone senior to you is not a good leader. They're just a good climber. And it's important for you to be able to distinguish between climbership and leadership. Tool number 9 is responding to counterproductive behavior. So I'm sure that many of you have experienced, and I'm purposely trying to be politically correct, using that term counterproductive. It could be toxic, it could be mean, it could be ignorant, low competence, it can be bullying, it can be absolutely predatory, even unethical and illegal. And so when you experience this in the workplace, I believe you have 3 choices, 3 options. Option number 1 is to be a doormat and just let that person continue with their counterproductive behavior. And I discourage that. Option number 2 is you could fight fire with fire. But as the phrase goes, the whole world ends up being blind and toothless. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And that predator, that counterproductive behavior, the narcissist, they have their methodology, and they've met more of you than you've met of them. And so I also discourage you trying to beat a narcissist at their own game. So what's left? There is a unique martial art called Aikido. And if any of you have experience in the martial arts or even some exposure to Aikido, I welcome you taking yourself off mute and describing to the rest of us what you know and love or dislike about Aikido. But the strength of Aikido and its appropriateness for us in teamwork is that Aikido tries to protect 2 people, because you might want to karate chop a coworker who's misbehaving, but HR probably will not allow you to karate chop your coworker. But what you can do is embody the martial art of Aikido, where you blend and you throw and you exaggerate your opponent's momentum into absurdity. So I'm going to repeat that. Martial art of Aikido exaggerates the counterproductive momentum into absurdity. So, for example, if your environment does not like the leadership paradigm of metaphors, you should stay squishy. And you should preach values and principles so that your executives or whoever can continue to opt out and not be detected opting out. And everyone smiles and nods their head to those values and principles on the wall, because evidently squishiness is the point. And if your environment doesn't like the notion of expressways and low marginal cost, then you now have the license to be absurd and say, you know what? I just want low upfront cost. I know that we're a restaurant with 50 dishes, 100 dishes. You know, we could create a written menu and have low marginal cost, but no, I want low upfront cost. We're a restaurant that's committed to not having a written menu. It's pretty absurd. And, you know, I don't like documentation. I just want to be a recording factory, a meeting factory. What constitutes success is we send a lot of emails and we record a lot of meetings. We talk and we record. And we talk and we record and we talk and we record. And that's what done means. In a communication traffic jam, even if we're moving slowly, you know what? Looking frantic. That's the success factor. Again, this should sound absurd to you, to lean in and embrace the traffic jam and say, you know what constitutes success isn't synchronization. I just want to feel fast. And I want to have our go live events really frequently. And I want to pivot like every day. That should sound absurd. And you know what? There's a time and place for our exotic vocabulary. And maybe your project plan, your task list. So at my former employer, I had a slide that had 100 different verbs. And I led 8 senior sales leaders in the Salesforce ecosystem, my sales enablement team. I led them into verb absurdity. 100 different verbs. It became the success factor for that account transfer process within Salesforce.com. And, you know, another absurdity thing is what constitutes success is we have meeting minutes. At least we have a paper trail. We give lip service. And you know what? The sampling errors and systemic errors, I want to aim for perfection sometimes, but otherwise I'm gonna have high tolerance for our dysfunction. And no, that VUCA thing, no, I think we should embrace VUCA. High tolerance for craziness. And I like a license for low expectations. I'm hoping that these all feel ridiculous to you. These feel absurd. And that's the point of the tool of Aikido. And so the last tool for tonight is whatever happens and whatever fraction of these tools that you like or dislike, someone senior to you is dictating the culture. This is their world and you're just in it. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not become bent out of shape. It is just a job. And what's more important than anything on the job is that you retain your sanity, your serenity, and your self-respect. And I hope that these tools give you a contrast. And now you have at least one person, you have my perspective of what does elegant look like? What does VUCA look like? What are these tools for a healthy collaboration to imitate a symphony? And what are the tools for hyper competition and a traffic jam? And so the 10th tool for tonight is just don't lose sleep over a dysfunctional environment. If you need to leave a toxic environment, absolutely do it. Do it for your self-respect, etc. But I wanted to end on a acknowledgement note that all of us are of a certain seniority. And I'm hoping that you have the psychological safety to reshape your environment. But I'm not delusional about the toxicity of many of our environments. So the last few slides. So in this session, I titled 10 Tools to Manage Up Without Kissing Up. And again, I'm trying to find material that minimizes redundancy with the BA Bach. It minimizes redundancy with other speakers. I attend a ton of events around the world, IIBA and otherwise. And so I'm hoping that these 10 tools offer alternatives for you to manage up. And when you rise in seniority, you will find some fraction of these tools to be beneficial for your team. So one last contrast before a call to action is that we can either have a license for low expectations and set ourselves up for failure when our leadership paradigms are squishy and we're addicted to speed because traffic jams, we accept them. And that racing matrix that you've known and used for 20 years, it's not solving your biggest problems. It harbors a lot of ambiguity. And if you're in an environment that ambiguity is the point, if ambiguity is the point, keep using RACI. and use a lot of verbs, 30, 40, 80 verbs. And if you need help with ideas, I have verbs for you so that you can cultivate and shape a culture of verb sprawl. And I can't say with a straight face. The disciplined agile world, the phrase is just barely good enough, as in be cheap. Are you going to put that on your CV, on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile that I excel at being cheap. I do what's just enough. No one's going to put that on their LinkedIn profile. It is about skill and generosity, making teamwork easy. And that is reducing marginal cost. But again, a license for low expectations is we're a culture of climbership and we're a culture of doormats. And what this does is it decreases our confidence in the job market. And I think I have a slide here about the supply and demand curve. For those of you who have had an econ class, you'll remember that the demand curve slopes a certain direction and the supply curve slopes a different direction. And when we lose confidence in our methodology, we move the supply and demand curves to the left. Companies under innovate, they under invest, and they have an excuse to under hire. And this hurts the job market. And so I absolutely believe that these tools that you're learning tonight and pivoting toward a people-centric methodology, it sets you up for success. It is a license for high expectations. But it means you embrace not a squishy leadership paradigm, but a pointy point of view, pointy leadership paradigms that say, you know what, if you don't want to be part of the symphony, karaoke's next door. Pick your metaphor, pick your verbs. Let's have speed be a lagging culture trait. What is the leading culture trait? It is obsession with synchronization. I want to imitate a communication symphony as much as possible. I'm going to manage with 5 verbs. And I'm not going to prohibit other work. I just know that anything not worth governing with 5 verbs, it's not worth putting on paper. It's just a chat. Do it at the pub. To set yourself up for success, you must have an asset portfolio. Think of your favorite musician when they retire. Elton John, the Beatles, Bruno Mars, Bon Jovi, Taylor Swift. They all leave behind a legacy for their audiences to enjoy at low marginal cost. You just have to push play. And we, as innovation professionals, should be imitating our favorite musicians to build an asset portfolio for those who come behind us. It's not easy work. It's not painful work. It is the hard work. And that's why we deserve to be well paid, is that we have the courage to do the hard work. We understand the difference between climbership and leadership. We're not going to be a doormat. When we see counterproductive behavior, I know you're not accountable to me. I'm going to fling you into something that you might be accountable to. And when we raise our confidence in our methodology, we move the job market to the right, the demand curve, the supply curve, and this improves the job market. This slide I created for the Ukraine chapter because they said, Robert, I like this stuff, but I don't know what to do next. So if you like this material, step 1 is anywhere you have a racy, instead of governing with 4 adjectives, govern with 5 verbs. If you have a task list of 30 or 40, 50 different verbs, find out what is worth a title, what belongs in your asset portfolio, and then govern that stuff with 5 verbs to shape an elegant expectation factory. If you feel you have documentation debt, get to work on your current state stuff. If you feel you have low morale, there are tools for that that we don't cover in this session. So again, along the left are culture traits that you might feel you have. And where I'm circling things is how, what within the asset portfolio would you put on paper to fix those culture traits so that you have an amazing asset portfolio to leave behind. But the alternative to this is a blob of meeting minutes, and it's a blob of recordings. And the problem with those is that's high marginal cost And I don't know how those are governed. I don't know what verbs apply to a recording. So I hope that this material is a combination of inspiration and tactics to shape a culture of high discipline and high empathy, because too many of us are in a culture of low discipline and low empathy. These materials help you distinguish being set up for success versus set up for failure. And again, the whole theme here is that you have people senior to you who are what I'll call innovation illiterate or innovation incompetent. You have every right to manage up without kissing up. The deep dive of this material is in my books, and I really appreciate being invited to talk to you tonight. And if we have time, I know you want to do chapter business as well, but we can at least have some Q&A tonight. I do have other materials from my other session on trust, if you'd like to dig into that. And I hope to stay in touch on LinkedIn. But yeah, Pallav or Sid, can I turn it back to you?
Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate. And yeah, I love the content, and I can't imagine how much effort goes into making a content like this. So I really appreciate you doing this. So now I'll open it for questions. So anybody, if you want to put your questions in the chat, please feel free to do so. Or if you want to unmute, come on the camera and ask anything, we can do that as well. And I think we can stop recording here. So Praveen, if you want to stop the recording, I think we can